it's 3:30. We're gonna sit down at 4, okay?
That's our first seating.
5.
I had always wanted to have my own restaurant. I love the upstart phase. I love the creative process.
You have one more place, big table, beignets. That's our last one.
I'm always inspired by wanting to be this pioneer.
We're off to a wedding now.
Good, you guys are really.
My mom, for a lot of reasons, really tried to talk me out of it. Don't you remember? This is a 24/7 thing. This ruins marriages. But I don't want to live life with regrets. I love Guerneville. Coming here and doing what I felt passionate about just felt right.
Anybody allergic to nuts? Any of you lesbians allergic to nuts?
I had the hotel, the restaurant, the bar, the market. Things really started cranking. Now you can't find a spot on Main Street, and the rents have increased. All of a sudden I got a call from Michael.
Guerneville, where are you now?
Someone's comparing you to Trump. You now own everything in town. I don't know, it's hard enough just working hard and then to have people attack you personally. It's painful. Why am I not sleeping at night? Why am I stressed out? Why am I worried about every little thing? Apparently I'm a very bad neighbor. I am overwhelmed. This is not what I want my life to look like anymore.
In Guerneville, the Russian River is already overflowing its banks.
After all of that blood, sweat, tears, the whole deal, that was gone like that. It just feels like too much. I don't know totally what's next for me. What do I do next?
Well, pretty amazing. We get to see what she's doing next because we're lucky enough to have her with us here today. So please help me welcome Chef Crista Luedtke. Yay!
Good morning.
Hi, how are you, Chef?
I'm good.
I'm so happy that you're kicking this off for us.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your patience with some of the technical difficulties. Hopefully I won't mess anything up here as the first one on the deck today.
We'll just have a shorter clock, a shorter time period to do our cooking. But
exactly.
I think one of the things I'm so excited about with Chef Crista's demo today is who we also have here for it. So we have Marianne Worobik, did I say your name right? Senior editor at Wine Spectator, who's going to talk about the wines that we're pairing with Chef Crista's awesome recipe. And we also have Stacy Vogel, who is the winemaker for Minor Family Winery, joining us along with Jessica. So thank you so much for being here. You can hear her, hopefully.
Anyway, there we go. Thank you. This is definitely Chef's show. I can't wait to see what she's going to do, but I am here to pepper in some ideas of how we approach food and wine pairing. You know, the old adage of red wine with meat and white wine with fish is 30 or 40 years old, and it was a very different time in our world where we didn't have as much global influence as we do now in our foods. And these days, of course, food is inspired, in fact, in this particular dish from several different parts of the world. So the new gospel is eat what you like and drink what you like, and one of the most important things you can do is to choose who you are pairing your meal with. And I
love it. The who. The who's important.
Great. So, Chef, do you want to get started, and then we'll have maybe Stacy talk about some of the wines she's picked.
Yeah. What are you making for us
Well,
today?
I know that a farro beet salad is not your typical breakfast, but neither is wine usually, I guess. So we're going to
That's yours, by the way.
We're going to get started.
Okay.
Today, what we're going to do is I'll sort of backwards engineer what you have in front of you.
Great.
So I prepared a farro salad with some beets, and it's with a whipped feta. And so we're going to kind of go through all the components today.
That's terrific.
One thing about working with farro or working with grains in general is that it's really good to soak them before you cook them. It's not imperative. I would definitely rinse them.
Right.
But soaking them actually neutralizes the phytic acid, which is difficult for our bodies to digest. So if you actually soak it, not only does it help your cooking time and reduces it significantly, but it's easier on digestion. It also helps break down gluten.
Got it.
So
how long do you like to soak it? This
overnight is
okay.
ideal.
All right.
Yeah. 8 hours, they say, is the minimum.
Okay.
And that helps break down the bran and the things that are causing us to have difficulty.
Right.
But if you can't soak it overnight, rinse it, and then you're just going to have a little longer cooking time. So I'm using Bob's Red Mill Organic, which you can buy at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's always tried and true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things in terms of cooking and shopping and trying to cook like a chef is start with really great ingredients, and it makes your life that much easier.
Right.
And so we're blessed out here in Napa, Sonoma County, to have like the most abundant of produce, dairy, meat, fish. So anyway, so we're going to get the farro going.
Well, and I know you're using some really interesting local ingredients as well today. So we'll get into the Bellwether Farms and some of the other cheeses that you're using. So is this something that's on the menu pretty typically at the market, Crista?
So this would be on, as a case salad in the market. You might also find it in a Whole Foods market. And if it's sort of basic, you can embellish it. So if you're having a dinner party and you want a nice salad, this is something that can be served cold. It can be served warm. It can be a side dish. It can be sort of the basis for your main. So there's a lot of ways to cook beets. I'm going to just boil the beets.
Okay.
And then it's TV magic, so I actually have some over here.
I love the TV magic part of
but
things.
We'll get these going. And I'm working on a monogram induction stove,
This is crazy. So cool.
John, the GE guy, is around here somewhere. You should ask him questions. He's amazing, but I've never seen anything quite like it. I have a few induction burners in one of my restaurants. They're really easy to cook on. It's a really even heat. They're really fast to heat up.
Right.
I know chefs love lots of BTUs and flames because that's fancy, but these things are incredible, and they'll quick boil anything. So we're going to get these going, and then we'll start working on some of the other prep, and you ladies can chat away for a bit.
We can talk about the strategies we came up with in picking these wines, and I definitely want Stacey to talk, but I have a very personal question. Is it farro or farro? Because I feel like I've heard both.
I think it can be both, because actually there's some history that takes it back. Farro is how I say it, but it was apparently Pharaoh's dish.
Right.
So I think tomato, farro, farro.
Okay.
Whatever we want.
Good to know. So when we picked the wines, all we had was the recipe. And there are some magical pairings when it comes to food and wine, champagne and caviar, foie and sauternes. There's also some foods that are historically very difficult to pair with wines, like beets.
Sorry.
So beets can be really sweet depending on how you prepare them, and they can also be really earthy. That's why my husband doesn't like beets, because he says it tastes like dirt. So I was like, please be roasted. Nope, they're pickled, which is another difficult thing to pair with wine. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's a challenge. So when we picked wines, we picked two wines that were very different from each other. And I think the idea is we want you to sip and try the wines. Stacey's going to kind of walk through them on their own, and then try them each with a dish, even if you're not a red wine person or not a white wine person. There are some elements in each wine that might work with different components of the dish. And then afterwards, I'd like to take a vote and kind of see which wine was preferred, or if usually it ends up being a tie. But it's just an interesting way to approach wine and food pairing. So I'd love you to talk about, let's start with the Sauvignon Blanc.
Sure. So our Sauvignon Blanc, I try to produce it in a very fruity, fruit-forward way, high acid, very bright on the palate. And I try to, when I'm sourcing vineyards, I look for vineyards that are going to produce Sauvignon Blanc with more tropical fruity notes, as opposed to the Sauvignon Blancs with more herbaceous or with more herbaceous notes, or grassy notes is often very, very popular in Sauvignon Blanc. So you get two kind of different styles. So I'm going for the tropical note characters, but I'm also, again, trying to keep it very light, floral, fruity, and crisp on your palate. So that's why we thought this would be a good pairing for the farro, and with a little bit of feta that's in it, and with the pickled beets, that it would be kind of nice and bright complement to that vinegar and to the acid that you're going to find in your.
Am I crazy, Stacey, or is it's just delicious on its own? Like, I think of your Sauvignon Blancs, I pick them up all the time as like, okay, I want to have something right now as I'm cooking or enjoying company. It's delicious. Thank you. I haven't tried any farro beets yet, but I like it.
In my household, Sauvignon Blanc is referred to as wine water because it's more refreshing than water.
Yes, agreed.
Excuse me. And yes, as Stacey was saying, Sauvignon Blanc typically is a really good pairing with goat cheeses and feta. It also, because it can also be a nice, like a squirt of lemon juice on a dish. It really can really brighten things up with that acidity. And so and then the other wine we picked was the Merlot. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So Merlot as a grape is very indicative of the place it's grown. It's almost like a sponge of, if you want to talk about terroir, Merlot is the greatest grape to give examples of that. So our Merlot, the vineyards that we source from are up on a mountain, up on the eastern hillsides of Napa Valley, and they've got a lot of, the vineyard has a lot of wild sage and a lot of mineral characters. And so it's very earthy for Merlot. It's very structured and very earthy style. So we thought this would pair really great with, again, those earthy beets and bring out the earthiness of the beets and the farro.
Kind of leaning into that pairing instead of going away from it.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
Exactly. So that's why we thought this would be a very different but also very complementary pairing, especially for those red wine only drinkers.
Yeah,
amazing.
So we're going to just jump in and explain a few things that are going on. One of the things that I like to do when I'm making a dish is I want to make sure that I'm texturally hitting a lot of different notes, which is why I wanted some boiled beets. And generally, anytime I boil them, make the water salty like the sea. Don't be shy. Just get in there. Because then they're sweet, like you said. They're earthy and they're sweet. And then I want to balance that out with this pickled note. So right now I have a pickling liquid that's going. And it can be any acid that you like, whether that's rice vinegar, which is a little sweeter, if you want cider vin. And I usually do a 1-to-1 water and pickling liquid ratio, and then add what you like. So I've got some peppercorns. I've got some Serrano chili in here because I want a little bit of heat in it, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt. And taste your pickling liquid. That's what it's going to taste like. So adjust to your likeness if you like it a little saltier, if you like a little sweeter pickle on it. And again, it's just about, for me, building different layers of flavor and layers and textures so that you get these different mouthfeels as you're eating the dish. So that's what's happening. The farro's going.
She's got it all going at
once. The farro's done. And now I'm just going to prep some beets for pickling, and then I'll let you guys
Are you going to pickle all of these beets, or are some of them
you're
just cooking? Okay.
So they're cooking, and the TV magic is here, so I'll cut those
So those
up.
are already done.
So we're just going to pickle the golden ones. Again, for me, part of how you eat is visually first, right?
Agreed.
So if it doesn't look good, you don't want to eat it.
Right.
So I want to build on different colors and some freshness, and so you'll see that as we build the dish together.
I love that this is a seasonal dish where you could kind of switch things out. And, if you've never pickled before, there's so many things you can pickle. It doesn't have to be beets, It doesn't have to be a cucumber or a pickle. But I love what you're doing because it reflects what's happening in the seasons right now. And you could certainly switch those out for other things. But once you learn this base recipe, chef, for your farro, it's just the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and the thing about farro in the fall, I think it's great because it's a really hardy grain. And so you can put it in soups and stews, and it never blows out like a rice might or another type of product that's in there. So it'll stay toothy, which is what I love about it. So, and it's also, again, if you're not a huge gluten person, it is like the lowest on the glutamic scale. It's an ancient grain, it's an heirloom grain, and I think it's one that people may be afraid of or it's overlooked, but I think go out after this and buy yourself some and get at it.
One thing I like about it, too, is I feel like you can make this salad and you can hold it for a few days in the fridge. It's something that can last, and it still tastes as good as when you made it.
Exactly.
So it's a great dish to make to kind of get you through the week as well. Gorgeous. So these beets, you're going to cut them in,
and then we're going to pour the hot
little
pickling liquid
to
over.
Put the pickle on it.
So again, with this, ideally you've made some of these things in advance, but even if you don't have the time, I call it a quick pickle. I literally made the dish the other day because I come up with these things and then I'm like, I wonder if it actually tastes good. Maybe I should actually cook it before the demo. So I made it 2 nights ago and it was delicious. But I pickled the beets literally before we had them, and so the only thing it didn't have was time to cool. But I made the salad as a warm farro salad and then had a nice piece of grilled chicken or salmon over it, and so it works as a complete meal as well as just a market side dish.
That is delicious. Has everybody tried the wine and the salad yet? We have anybody going white versus red on the wine? White. Red?
Let's take a show of hands real quick. Who's leaning towards the Sauvignon Blanc, the white wine, is a better pairing? Okay. And the red, the Merlot? Yeah, it's almost usually half and half. It looks like the white has a slight edge to it. Can I jump in here, Chef?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually wanted to pick up on something brilliant you just said about leaning into the earthy flavor.
Yeah.
That is one of the strategies when it comes to food and wine pairing. You can either match the flavors or contrast them. Those are two completely different ways to go. So with the Sauvignon Blanc, you're definitely, contrasting the earthy flavor, but with the Merlot, you are leaning into it. I think that's a really good way to describe it. And Chef was talking about textures. Texture is another thing to consider when it comes to pairing food and wine. You know, my favorite extreme example is we really don't pair milkshakes with salads, right? So
You don't?
I was going to say, in my house, we talk a lot about the milkshakes.
Most of us don't pair milkshakes with salads, but the idea that one of the things that does seem to hold through is a really robust, hearty, full-bodied red will go better with heartier dishes and meat and that sort of thing, because the weight and the texture are more similar than
It's a great rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Especially when I really enjoy wine, but I kind of get lost at that point, right? Especially if you're trying to work with something like a beet, I'm just guessing what I'm like, okay, here's what I like. So it's really nice to have some of those guidelines to go by when you really don't know as much as you do, which is fantastic. So I'm really interested in kind of the flavors that she's putting together here to go with this in the wine, because I think it's not, you've got the beets, which unto themselves are complicated, but then we've got all these bright flavors, which I love too. You're going to get that citrus hit, and then you're working with dried olive, Chef?
Yeah, so I'm going to do that next. So, sorry, my farro was already cooked, I'm not going to lie. So it doesn't normally look like this, but I wanted to get it warm and heated up.
How long typically does it take if you've soaked it?
If it's been soaked, maybe 15 minutes.
Oh, wow, that fast. I don't cook it enough.
But check it. It's going to depend, again, on, there's several different types of farro, so you can get whole, you can get semi-pearled, you can get pearled, and that's how much bran layer has been removed.
Right.
That affects the cooking time. So the most it's going to take is probably 45 minutes if you haven't soaked it and all of that stuff. So, but this was ready to go.
If only I knew you when I was learning how to cook. We're just joking. I met her today, and I heard her refer to Arizona, and I said, oh, where are you from? We grew up in the same town with the same high school. She's a year behind me in school.
She's 1 year older.
I'm older. She's wiser, I have a feeling. So, and done some pretty incredible things with your life. But you're not putting me to work.
No, I know. I was going to make you cut the beets so you could get all dirty,
something.
but I
don't
won't
care.
do that to you. Here's a fun little trick, and I think this is the kind of, so I'm not classically trained. My mom, who's sitting in the audience,
here.
I learned to cook from my mom, and then I just kept learning and working with chefs. And so I like to pick up little tricks and teach you guys little tricks that sort of elevate your game in the kitchen. And so one of my favorites is to buy at the Whole Foods market the oil-cured black olives.
Right.
And rinse them thoroughly. But we don't have a sink up here. So pretend I rinsed them thoroughly.
She's done it all.
And then put them on just a sheet pan, and we're going to go into our monogram oven.
So awesome with the double doors I saw last night. These ovens are incredible.
And if you have a convect on your oven at home, it's great because it'll roll air over it. So what I like to do with these black olives is I'll literally turn them on at night, turn my oven as low as it can go, 175, and I'm basically dehydrating them. If you have a dehydrator, that's great too. And then you're essentially making this beautiful black olive crumble that's on top of your thing. It can go on soups. You can garnish it on your salads. It adds a really nice salty and earthy note.
Right.
And it's unexpected, and people are like, what is this? So
big hit.
Yeah, it just adds this little pop, and it's something that I think you can put on so many things, and it's a very easy little trick. But people don't think about it. So
I've even seen people do that if you just have olives left over. I'm a huge fan of going and getting a bunch of them to make a cheese plate or something like that. But if you've just got a couple left over and you throw them in the oven like this, it's completely transforms
and now
them.
you've got a little container of them. Keep them in the fridge. Keep them in your pantry.
So clever.
The same with
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, so that's this guy right here.
Unbelievable.
So it just looks like dirt.
Dust. Dirt.
But it's fun, and it, again, adds that nice earthy component. So those are in the oven, and they're going to go for a while.
Okay.
We've now finished our beets, so I'm just going to cut them up in whatever shape, size you want. And we're going to start to make our whipped feta. Did you all like the feta underneath?
Oh, so good.
So in the pickling mixture, and I can, if you want to email me too, I'm happy to give you the recipe of what we did today.
Right.
So I used rice vinegar, and it's a 1-to-1 rice vinegar and water. And then I used sugar, salt, a serrano chili, and some garlic and some peppercorns. But again, you can buy pickling spice. You can make it however you like it. I like it a little bit with a little bit of heat. So what we're going to do is, again, just simple transforming of basic ingredients. And it's always fun to use the equipment
I know,
for the first time.
It takes two.
And so I'm starting with a ricotta from Bellwether Farms, which is a Sonoma producer, very small, family-run creamery. And I love it because it's just like such a beautiful, unctuous, like base for it. So we
Slightly
start
magical.
Yeah. So we're going to start with this in our processor.
I love to,
Maybe.
Whole Foods, I was sharing with you that I do a lot of recipe development and I do all my shopping there, but they carry so many of these local vendors for us.
And I think that's the thing, again, is just starting with really great products, and the more of them that you can get locally, the better they're going to be.
Right.
And then I'm using Redwood Hill Farm, another Sonoma County producer. Really amazing family. They're all still working it. And I like to use a goat feta. I think goat cheese pairs really beautifully with beets. But if you want to use just a basic feta, cow's milk or sheep's milk, those are all great. This is actually
sharper?
a sheep's... it has a more of a tang,
Okay.
and I like that because it kind of has that little acid sort of note to it.
Right. Great.
And you shouldn't need to add any salt because this is plenty salty, and that's where the ricotta helps as well because it sort of mellows it out so it's not super, super salty.
I could eat this on its own.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this whipped feta is, again, it's something you can put in the fridge for a few days. You can use it on a lot of different things.
Right.
Use it just as a dip.
Oh.
And you tasted the Dukkha. So Dukkha Spice is actually, it's an Egyptian spice, and it's essentially a mix of seeds and nuts. And there are many different recipes for it. Today, this has pepitas, because I figured we're fall. Let's have some pumpkin seeds. It has hazelnuts, which are pretty common in almost all Dukkha.
Oh.
And then, in addition to that, black sesame seeds. And the spice mix always contains cumin, but in my case, it's cumin, coriander, and fennel seed. And you're going to toast all the seeds separately and then pulse them because you don't want like a big bite of a seed. And then you're going to toast your nuts because everything toasts at slightly different. Then you mix it all together. And you can do it in one of these little Cuisinart pulsers, or if you have a coffee grinder at home, then just make sure you rinse your grinder real good.
I have one for coffee and one for anything, any other crazy science experiment I'm doing. It's a great size, too. It's not too big, the Cuisinart.
And then we're going to make some dressing in this thing.
Okay.
So this Cuisinart blender, I was looking it up. It's
Doing your homework?
3.5 horsepower. That's like 5 times more powerful than your garbage disposal.
Wow.
So don't stick your finger in here.
It's going to do the job for us.
That's what's going on.
That's so great. So you're going to do a citrus vinaigrette?
We're going to do a citrus fin. So I'm going to get this stuff going while you guys chat some more about wines.
Sure.
Or
Delightful.
That Dukkha Spice is probably one of the best I've ever had. Do you have any other suggestions of what I can put the Dukkha on?
Absolutely. You can put it on anything. I put it on my scrambled eggs.
Really?
Wow.
It's
Grilled.
delicious if you ground it up a bit more, it's really delicious as a coating for fish or chicken. So if you're going to sear it, you can crust it with this. It's super aromatic, and that's the other reason why you want to toast all your seeds. You really want to activate them, and so you'll smell them, and they quickly burn, so be really careful when you're doing that one to watch it.
Look, I'm sitting here geeking out about the food and wine pairings, and I think the Dukkha really is what might be giving the red wine the edge here. But if you have any food left in your dish, and you really shouldn't at this point, but if you do, if you find any of the fresh green herbs, I had this little piece of dill. Put it in your mouth and then take a sip of the Sauvignon Blanc, and you'll really see how the Sauvignon Blanc just amplifies that flavor. So that's why I think both of these wines work, because one of them is dealing with the fresh herb note, and the other is dealing with that dried, earthy note. She was talking about olives, and it reminded me that black olive is a typical tasting note in Merlot. Would you describe your Merlot as having some of that olive note?
Not specifically. That's not a note I've ever used in this. This Merlot is typically, we get a lot of earthiness, a lot of iron mineral sort of character, and again, a lot of sort of wild sage or wild brambly sort of note.
Do you want to pick some herbs?
I'd love to. She's finally giving me a job. I feel helpless up here. I'm used to being the one doing the cooking. I can pick herbs. Dill and parsley for you?
Yes, please.
Great. The pickles are delicious.
Another thing I think that really sort of changes the flavors of a dish is making your own vinaigrettes. It's not to say I don't have bottled stuff in the refrigerator for when I cheat, but it's really simple. It's olive oil, lemon, some salt, and then a grain mustard or a honey, something that emulsifies it. Because if you have you see vinaigrettes where they're separated, it's because it's like oil and water, right? They don't want to bind with each other. So if you put in a grain mustard, not only does it add a nice little bit of a kick, but it coats the molecules so that they'll stick together.
I love just making one every week, and then you can put it on these grain salads. You can use it for green salads. I mean, again, you can put it with anything you grill. They're just so versatile.
I'm kind of afraid of the blender.
It's a car.
This has more engine than my Volkswagen Bug when I went to high school. That's what I drove, actually.
What color?
It was a little yellow bug.
Oh, my God. How did I not know her? The coolest girl there, I'm telling you.
I was not that cool in high school.
I don't know.
Chef, does working in wine country change the way you approach your food?
I think on one level, certainly yes, but I think on one level it gives us an advantage because, again, it's so easy to start with really great ingredients, not have to do a lot to it. It's just about picking the right choices and putting it all together. But knowing the producers as well is lovely because you get the highest quality of product, you get that relationship with the vendor.
Yep.
For me, I think it's like when you're preparing food, it's about the intention that you put into it comes through in the final dish. And so if you do it with passion and you do it with care and you treat the vegetables and the grains and these things properly, the dish speaks for itself. I mean, I tell my chefs in the kitchen all the time, like, if you're mad, people taste it because they're like whipping the pans around in the kitchen. I'm like, you have to do it with love and with intention, and you can taste it.
I have to interrupt you here because I think if you have the opportunity to see her film, Jessica did such an incredible job of showing the amount of love and energy that you put into everything you do. And if you have, how many of you are from out of town? Okay, yeah.
Yay.
So a nice group. If you haven't been to Guerneville and seen what Chef Crista has done to that town in terms of the businesses and the food that she's brought there, it's magical. But you get that in however minutes long the film is. You can feel it is so palpable that everything that you care about is going on to that plate. And it doesn't matter if she's opening a market or a restaurant or a bar. It's all of you out there, which I found to be the best part of the film. Yeah. Really amazing.
I'll just jump in here. I met Crista because my husband and I moved to Guerneville from San Francisco about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And we moved around the time that the recession was happening. That was in 2008, and had blinders on to the fact that the town was sort of a ghost town. There was not a lot going on. Within a year, her restaurant opened, Boone, and we were just ecstatic because we could get, a San Francisco quality meal right in town and walk into town. And then over the course of 5 years, the town truly transformed. I mean, she opened up a market, and then there was a bar, and then other people started coming up from San Francisco and opening different restaurants. And Main Street just transformed. And so that was the genesis of why we wanted to do this film. We went to her and just asked if we could follow her around with a camera for a little bit. We didn't really know what was going to come of the film, whether it would become sort of a historical look at how Guerneville has changed through the years, and this was sort of the latest peak. But very quickly, her story became the central pivoting point for us, and was really inspiring to see sort of how much dedication she had to her craft, and also the toll that restaurant life can take on you. So it was a very emotional journey, and we followed her around for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then the short film grew out of that. So yeah, we'd love for you all to see it. It's playing again Friday night at 8:15 as part of the Documentary Shorts 1 program. So
where will that be?
Farmstead, which is in St. Helena. And then there's a third screening. Sorry, I'm going to have to check my schedule. I think it's Saturday?
Saturday evening as well, and I cannot remember. I think it's 8:15, and it's not Farmstead, but it's somewhere else.
Somewhere else, yeah.
If you do go see it, I have a follow-up question for Chef, because I wanted to know what you're most excited about now in your future. She has put so much into this town. But what are you most excited about today as you're working?
So I've been working a lot actually with Jessica. Empire has been a big part of the last year on the film festival circuit, and we're getting such a great response. People just connecting with the story on whatever level, but I think it reaches people, and that's really why I felt comfortable sharing my story with Jess, is that I knew that everybody can relate in some way of what it means to chase your dream and what you sacrifice along the way. And so it's connected with a lot of people, and so we've actually started to work on it as a documentary series that we're pitching called Making Main Street, and following other chefs hoteliers, entrepreneurs in the hospitality space, and what they've done to sort of reinvigorate and enliven small American towns across the U.S. So we're very hopeful that maybe someone will pick that up. In addition, I'm working on a show that recently got picked up by a TV network called Reach TV. They're a digital network online, so you can go to reachtv.com. And the show is called Lost in Taste. And we started,
Love that name.
Jessica and I, making this.
great.
While we were filming the documentary, we just became very close, and we all love food. And so we started shooting in Cambodia and subsequently went to Germany and Sweden.
Wow.
And as soon as we get someone to help fund this sucker, we'll continue to go.
Coming to you.
So watch it a lot because we need your eyeballs on it and numbers. But it's a fun little show. It's essentially me connecting with locals in countries all over the world and finding the specific ingredients that make their cuisine so unique and really make their culture thrive. And so some of those things are not fun things to eat.
No.
But it's
did
about
it.
learning the culture, and it's about connecting with people through food, which is how I love to connect. So I hope that you enjoy it. And I would love to welcome you all to Guerneville. Check out our funky little town.
Yeah.
It's only an hour and a half from here.
Not
so.
far. Amazing. Well, what I want to see
So
what
the
everybody
wind
thinks.
blew my stuff a little bit, but ultimately, that's if you wanted to plate a big dish for a
gorgeous.
dinner party or individually on plates. Again, if you're doing this in a big bowl for people, you could not do the whipped situation and just crumble feta in it. It's really up to you how you want to present the dish. But I sort of like this nice sort of, smear underneath, and then people are scooping, and you get a different bite every time, and that makes it fun.
It's gorgeous. And I love how she cut the beets differently. So you have the pickled ones, and then you have the red ones, and you just get that contrast in texture, flavor, acid, everything that you talked about. It's like you gave us some wonderful tips to take away and make us look like real professionals. Chef.
Does anybody have questions?
Yeah. Yes.
They were raw. Yep. So just peel them, cut them however you like, but obviously smaller is better in terms of, getting them to pickle quickly. And again, make more than you think you need, because this is a great thing that keeps in the refrigerator, and it's great to just throw on your salads during the day. I grew up in Wisconsin, and pickled beets were like the grossest thing ever.
Not your
They were like
favorite
mushy
food.
and in a can, and
Right.
so I always was like, I hate beets, and now I love beets, and I eat them all the time. In fact, we get them pretty much every week in our CSA. I don't know if any of you belong to a community sustainable agriculture where you get a farm box.
Yeah.
Beets are something that grow year-round, so it's another nice thing. And actually, I wanted to say that I typically will use the beet tops as
So
well.
good, too. They're
and
so
just
delicious.
rinse them, chop them up, saute them, put them in your scrambled eggs, but use every part of the vegetable because there's so many great ways to use them all, and I think it's a waste to just throw those things away. Otherwise, chop them up, put them in the freezer, and add them to your smoothies. And this thing would make a killer smoothie blender.
I can't wait to mess around with this.
But yeah, use all the parts of it. But a lot of these components, I mean, again, that's what I really wanted to sort of say to you. Everyone can make a simple salad. It's about sort of creating these fun and flavorful little notes that sort of just take the game up a level. And I think if you just have some of these little secrets in your pantry and you pull it out and you wow your dinner guests, and it adds another layer of nuance when you're drinking some of these wines, right? And I think that's what's fun to me about exploring food is understanding all the subtleties and putting together this layer of fat, this layer of acid, this layer of earth, use fresh herbs. I mean, I think we often forget to do that. But again, that's another one that takes a salad from being just good to great.
Amazing. Absolutely.
And it's simple. So those would be my tricks for you when you're going shopping, is to do a couple of these little things and build a little thing in your pantry where you can sprinkle. I mean, we sprinkle the black olives on our scrambled eggs.
Oh my gosh, I would put that on everything.
It's
it's
like in lieu of salt, we use this a lot.
Brilliant.
And so it's good on eggs. It's great on if you make a hummus and you put either that or the Dukkha and a drizzle of olive oil.
It looks so sophisticated.
It just takes your store-bought hummus
to the next
up
level.
another level. So
Well,
I like to cheat. Not cheat, but
find ways to shortcut throughout the week.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And this isn't exactly the kind of
you
cheating
can take
most
that one
people
home
do.
if you like.
I would love.
I've got a little container.
Okay.
And I have
know
some Dukkha if people want to take some home as well.
I would love to taste that Dukkha as well. That's such an interesting spice blend. And I know we're out of time here, but just to take the final vote on the wine, whites versus white. My gosh, red. It's kind of down the middle here. Amazing.
But they are both beautiful, beautiful wines. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that Minor was so generous with us to
Excuse me.
share the good stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, before we wrap here, I just want to thank all of our incredible sponsors. First of all, the space at Feast It Forward is amazing. What a beautiful place to have it. But Monogram and Cuisine and Whole Foods Market, of course, Minor Family Winery. Stacey, thank you so much for being here with us as well. We really appreciate it. And
Can I
Paula
throw a-
Leduc did
I was going to say, I want to thank the crew at Paula
They're-
Leduc Catering who's up there because they did
All
I
of this.
sent them a list of things to do, and they knocked it out of the park.
Perfection.
So hopefully you enjoyed it today.
And
if you
Chef-
have other questions, I'm going to be hanging around. Feel
Thank
free to
you.
come and chat.
Thank you for sharing your story and your food with us.
Yeah,
It
thank
was
you.
delicious. Thank you. So fun. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope you'll come back and see us. We're here doing a couple more every day, and enjoy the films. Feel free to come up and ask us questions.
I have lots of mise en place left over.
Amazing. You are just such a hard worker.